And you understand what a theoretical profit means.
I don't.
Okay, just I've got to turn up my screen just a bit too. Uh, what it means is uh, when we get to about 65%,
Mhm.
you're actually at break even,
Yes.
65% of our goal. But last week you had 82%, which means that's a theoretical profit.
Mhm.
And what that means is if you can maintain that over time, right, now you're going to start, because profit, whether you're profit or not profitable, is really an end of the year discussion.
Yeah.
But we've got to be more vital than that. We've got to be vital to the thing. And at 82% of your goal, that's why we set the goal up the way we set the goal up. And the things that will affect our goal is increase in expenses and decrease in sales. So theoretically, we have measured it, and theoretically there's a profit,
Okay.
but profit only happens over time.
Yeah.
All right, so we've got to maintain that. We've got to work out how to maintain that over a time frame.
Mhm.
And we're starting to see a pattern emerge, even though it's very early in the piece. It's pretty obvious that people are doing their faces for the weekend.
Yeah.
You know, Monday and Tuesday don't seem to be like, oh, these are good face days,
Yeah.
right? And then by the end of the week, we're looking at good face days. And so at some moment, that's how we got to view it. And then as we start to look at where do we put our energy on Monday and Tuesday versus the rest of the week. And I think we can start to determine that just by the little bits of information we have.
Mhm.
So that's what I would say to you. It's like, did you get a chance to talk to anybody in the mall?
I went to two of the businesses and spoke to them. Um, One went quite well. Another one, they just kind of looked at me. I said that I would be dropping some new menus down, and I took their cards.
Great.
But I also, yeah, I dropped another lady that I work quite closely with is my florist. So I went and chatted to her, but we have a very good relationship to begin with. So I dropped some menus down to her.
Right. And when you said you had the feedback, what was the feedback? You said one was pretty ordinary, the other one.
I think it's the centre's been a bit funny with the way that the businesses interact. There's a gym there that I went to, but they're not very welcoming or open. They don't tend to want to kind of cross promote things together. But I just went down and had a chat and just took their card and just said that we're releasing a new menu and I'd like to drop some off, and would they be happy with that? And I'm happy to take some of their media and put it in for our new clients. They just
Let me ask
always,
you this question.
yeah.
Were you talking to employees or owners?
Manager, not the owner.
Yeah. And it's in my view, like when you're doing something like that and you're talking about cross-pollination, you're really talking, you have to be talking to someone that can make a decision.
Yeah.
And when you're talking to the manager, it's like they're too busy to do that stuff. They don't see the importance of it.
Mm-hmm.
But when you're talking to the owner, you have no choice but to see the importance of it.
Yeah.
Right. And so I think that's you've got to start to gauge the words and the language that you're using with the people you're speaking to.
Mm-hmm.
And it's as much about you in the way that you present and the words that you're using as you're presenting. I think it's very important to understand that. It's very important to understand that it's good that you do it, because exposure is what it's all about. And I'm going to give a lesson near the end of this lesson as well about the concepts of macro and micro viewing.
Mm-hmm.
And so right now what we're doing is very micro. and we're looking at it and saying, okay, there a direct response from what I did was this.
Yes.
And the point I would make to you is we become extremely lucky the more contacts we make.
Mm-hmm.
And luck is very important in business. And there's a concept, and I'm going to share my screen now. There's a concept that goes on, which I'm a very keen believer of. Let's go here so I can get a blank screen. And a lot of people will think it's a hokey concept. And I guess that's for a lot of people to determine for themselves. But what you're doing when you go to make a call is you start to look at it and we create a boundary. Can you see my drawing?
Yes.
You start to create a boundary. So this is your center and this is you going out. But all of a sudden, the stuff starts to move this way. And there's an expression that says luck, if you want luck, luck happens at 90 degrees. Do you understand what I mean by that?
No.
Okay, so when you look at luck happens at 90 degrees, it means that all the work, when you're calling on people and you're exposing yourself, all of a sudden, something comes from somewhere else. And so it's like what I was saying to Gerry, either side, across either side. And when you do that, you create luck.
Mm-hmm.
So the fact that you've gone out and you talk to people, that will create luck and things will happen at 90 degrees. So all of a sudden your books start to fill up, not by the people you called on, but because you're out there exposing yourself.
Mm-hmm.
You understand? So you think you're heading one way and all the action starts happening another way.
Yeah.
So now you start to keep track of your numbers and you'll start to see that you'll start to put your energy and your thoughts as to where you need it to happen, where you need the money to happen. So we've had Monday and Tuesday have been ordinary days, but sooner or later we're going to work out what a Monday should produce.
Mm-hmm.
Right? And then we'll start to work on a Monday and say, have a target for Monday of say $500 or $600, but we'll have a target of on Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, that will be maybe $1,500.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And so we start to think like that, and we when we're in the Monday, Tuesday, they've got to be creating luck days.
Mm-hmm.
You understand my point? That's when you can get out and expose yourself more. I shouldn't really say it like that, but you can get out and expose your business more. My apologies.
That's all right.
You got to be careful today. Okay, so now what we're looking at in your menu, have you had any feedback on your menu from anybody else?
I haven't. I have had a little bit of feedback, but most of it's been positive. I did chat to one of my ladies, my florist that I do. I get a lot of feedback from her because she's in the kind of age group that I have in the salon, and she said very similar that the build your own section was a little bit. She likes the idea, but she said it was a little bit hard to read. It was a little bit hard to follow.
Yes.
Yeah, but she said she likes the idea. That's probably really all the feedback that I've had on it. Most people liked it.
Well, and again, it's good, like when you're getting out and exposing outwards your business and exposing the stuff that you need to, automatically something comes back.
Yeah.
And the more that you can look at that, the better it's going to be.
Yeah. But I launch it on next week on Tuesday. We start handing it out to clients, so I should have some more feedback then. We've just been doing training this week to make sure that the girls are comfortable with everything.
Okay, and make sure that they understand the menu and how to take people and explain it and all the rest of it, and their wordage, the words they're going to use when they're talking through it and stuff like that. Okay, that's great. Okay, Gerry, we're going to start to spend a little bit of time with you. Is that okay?
Yes. No, that's fine.
Megan and I have to catch up with stuff that, we're just catching up on last week's conversation, really. You understand that, Megan? It's like we're trying to keep last week vital.
Yes.
Yeah.
And we can't just let it slip through and say, okay, well, we've done this. The numbers are starting to show a pattern. And when we see that pattern, we're going to start to plan from that pattern.
Yes.
And I'm already telling you the pattern, and we both know that that's the case.
Yeah.
I mean, you don't have to be Einstein to work out that that's what's going on. But what we then need to do is work out how do we improve Monday and Tuesday. Mm-hmm. And then we then look at the selling in the shop, the stuff that you can sell in the shop. And, if people don't get in, how do we expose the shop more, and all the rest of that. So we'll go through that. Megan, did you get my last email where I said I wanted to have a look at Gerry's invoice book?
Yes. So we don't have a book. But what I did was I printed out his invoice and quotes for him.
Okay, so let me have a look at it. Do you want to share your screen?
I don't have it on this computer.
No, just hold it up to the camera then. I just want to have a look at it.
Kelly wants to see your invoice and
What would you like to see? Sorry, Kelly.
The actual invoice that you give to a customer
Okay.
when you give them. Okay.
This is one of them.
Okay, so that looks pretty good, really. Now read to me what you write when you charge someone $25,000.
Obviously, we just put down basically the site address of the job. We got there on this one, and basically just a brief outline on the type of work that we've done for them.
Well, read what it says.
On this particular one, all it just says is details as per purchase order. So I don't know what our purchase order says, but let me read another one to you. We've got another one here, and the quote description says excavate footpaths on both sides of the house, place F62 mesh formwork and AbleFlex foam. Quote is based on coming back at a later stage to prepare and pour. Cost can be minimised by preparing on a day of excavation for driveway. Please call if you need any clarification with this quote. I don't know which one this one was actually. It's a very old one, 2016. And then we've got the price. What we've done, we've broken it down. We just said excavate proposed concrete area. Place mesh, 25 MPa concrete. And then what have you got there? Oh, okay, yeah, look, this particular job, I'm just having a bit of a read through it now. It was, sometimes when we go out and do a job, the client might say, could you price it as if it was plain concrete or exposed concrete or decorative? So the only thing that's really going to change is the concrete type. So instead of having just plain grey concrete, we may have a coloured concrete or exposed aggregate concrete. So on this particular quote that I just read out, it's basically exactly the same process to put the concrete in. However, the final product, which is either going to be exposed or plain, just differs by obviously the amount it costs for the difference in coloured concrete to plain concrete. That's probably not the best example.
Okay, but it is an example.
Yes. Yep.
And
very basic.
Basic.
There's two ways that we do it with the invoices. One's in Excel. That's why I said to you, we're still trying to work out what software to utilize. The ones in Excel are very normal. Like normally it'll just say labor, concrete, driveway. It's very basic. Or we have some invoices that we pull from a software program that Gerry started using. And that's more, you do a description like you write a sentence. So poured driveway at such and such street.
Can we just email something to Kelly right now?
Yeah.
Okay, I'd like to see it because what are
Yeah.
your terms and conditions on that? What other terms and conditions do you have on your invoice?
Well, I've got, see, there's these ones that I'm holding up to you now. This is like an older version. Then I've got a newer version with different terms. On the bottom here, in terms, we've got this payment claim is made under the Building and Construction Industry Payment Act 2014, Queensland. And then on the other one that I've got down below, on this other older one, we've got above information is not an invoice and only an estimate of services described above. Estimate is valid for 30 days. 10% deposit is required on acceptance, 40% progress payment on commencement of job, and balance on completion of works. And then it just, please transfer deposit to such and such Iconic Concrete bank account. There are details listed below.
So basically, you cover you get 10% to start the job.
Yes.
And 40%. When does the 40% come in?
On commencement. So basically, 10% on deposit. As soon as they say, yeah, okay, we'll go ahead with it. As soon as they agree to give us the green light, we'll then request 10% to start the job. Then we can order any materials. And the day we actually get to site, we request another 40% on commencement of the project. And then the final 50 is when we complete the job.
And when do you normally get paid?
And then on this one, it says, when do we normally get paid?
We don't follow that, Kelly. Like, we don't have a system in place that follows that properly. So
when do we normally get paid, Kelly? Anyway,
you get your 10% up front always, yeah?
Yes. Yeah.
One shaking their head, one shaking their head, the other one saying yes.
no.
Not always. Now, these jobs that we've just read out are homeowners, or one's leap, and then usually the builders, they sort of get away with murder, the builders, because they sort of dictate, well, they have been dictating to me, basically, this is what the price is. If you want the work, come and do it, which we have been, just so I can. All right, we've just flicked off.
All right, I'll wait till they come, and I'm going to make some observations.
Yeah, for sure.
The quote that I sent through is an older one.
That's a quote, and then did you send an invoice as well? Okay, good. We'll have a look at those. Because the reason why I asked you for your invoice book was your invoice numbers.
Yep.
Right. So it looks like you're coming out of a book, and it's a handwritten book and all the rest of it, but it's not. It's reasonably well branded by the sound of it. So again, your branding is quite strong, but it stops there.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so those are the sort of things we can clean up. Who do you think your number one, or tell me, who's your number one customer?
At the moment, I'd say these builders, they're the ones that sort of keep us busy.
Yeah, no, that's customers. Who's your number one customer?
I don't know.
I think it would be Brick Construction or Leap.
Yeah, brick construction looks pretty good at 87,000.
Yeah, they keep us busy, but he's probably one of the worst payers too. I think we waited 3 months for one payment, and that was just ridiculous. They owed us 20-something thousand we waited on, but yeah, Brick. But then we get a lot of homeowners that I do, just you're in and out in one day. So they're pretty good too, because you can pick up some really quick money off those ones. So do we have many of?
Okay, but what's a lot?
Oh, anywhere from $3,000 to $10,000 a day. We can go in and do a $3,000 to $4,000 job, and we're in and out in 6 to 8 hours.
Yeah, and that's good. But what's a lot of customers? Yeah, this is not a feel-good session right now. This is
No, absolutely.
This is, we're looking at what's there. How many's a lot of customers?
Oh, look, when I'm not doing work for builders, that's where I fill in my other time by going to the mum and dads.
Okay, but how many mum and dads are you dealing with?
Anywhere in a year, probably up to, I don't know, 200, mum, and like 200 customers, I suppose, in a year.
Well, that's not what's reflected on these numbers.
No, well, there's all that's on here that I can see on the sheet that you got is just all builders. That's all I can see on there.
This is just your invoice list from last year.
So you do a few cashies.
We do some cashies, but we've also got, where's our service mate that we run?
There's your list that I sent Kelly. It's just 2 pages. Everything from 28/6, so last year to now. That's everything. Just because that's all you put through as your invoice.
Yeah, okay.
See, according to what I'm looking at,
Yes.
you've got 6 singles and 5 multiples. So you got 6 single users, used you once, and then you've got 5 multiple users that use you and spend a fair bit of money.
Yep.
And so what I hear you saying is the ideal scenario.
Yeah, we do have a different system there, Lord.
No.
There's no service mate on there, though.
But these are what you sent.
Yeah.
You haven't done really many small drivers.
Yeah, okay.
I'm just sorry. I'm just explaining to Gerry where this is the current invoice sheet. Previously, in the past, he's done a fair bit of driveways, but last year he hasn't. He didn't do really many small jobs since June, July last year, because he's been more focusing on the larger builders.
Yeah.
So realistically, if you were to look from last year to now, there's only a few small jobs.
Ones that maybe not on there. Yeah.
Well, no, that's pretty much.
Yeah, look, it makes sense to me, and I can understand what you're saying, Gerry. These are just observations about what is. And I would tend to, agree with you that you have to have a way of thought around these brick constructions and so on,
Yes.
right? The AR developments and the other people, like when you're looking at Sunny Vista's a good one. In fact, Sunny Vista's is the one that spends the most money on the biggest jobs, according to these numbers. How are they at paying?
They're really good. They're every fortnight those guys, they're really good.
What does that mean? Every fortnight they're really good. What does that mean?
So every fortnight they pay on time every time. I think it's the 15th and 31st of the month they pay.
Okay, so they have a payment system that works probably off an ERP.
Yeah. So,
and so they allocate their monies out twice a month.
Yeah.
So it depends when you get your invoice in and aid your invoice with them.
Correct. Yep.
All right, so that makes sense too. And when you're working with somebody like that, it seems to me like they're the ones. Could you do more work for Sunny Vista? If I'm looking at this, Sunny Vista is the one of all the big customers that are all the larger end users that you have.
Yes.
Sunny Vista looks to be the one that I would focus on.
Yeah.
And now that I know that they're a good payer, but what's even more important with their payments, rather than being good payers, they pay by a process.
Yeah. So do AR developments. They're exactly the same. They're fortnightly, and they pay on the 15th and 31st as well. They're good payers, AR developments.
And so brick construction is not such a good payer.
Not such a good payer. I'm always trying to squeeze him to get our money.
We always have to follow up.
Yeah, I'm always chasing him, like, pay.
And then he pays he'll pay us in dribs and drabs.
Yeah, so we'll invoice him, say, one of those invoices, even a $6,000 invoice there. He might give us $2,000 1 week and, fix up the remainder in a couple of weeks, 3 or 4 weeks' time, whenever he sort of feel like it. So that's it's hard for our cash flow when that happens, because I've still got to pay my guys. there's George Copland. He's definitely the best. I can put an invoice in, and within 24 hours or 48 hours, I think I've had to wait. He's the number one on my list. So every time George Copland rings, I'll drop just about anything and go and do work for him because I know the colour of his money is there within 48 hours.
Okay, so and is it possible to increase the amount of work you do for George Copland?
I don't think he builds much anymore, Kelly. He's a bit of an older gentleman, and I think he's sort of towards the end of his retirement, so he's not building as much as he used to. We've sort of just got onto him. I think he's probably only got one or maybe two more projects, but yeah, I wish I knew him bloody 3-4 years ago. He was sort of pushing out a lot of work, but I think he's sort of coming to the end of his retirement. He wants to hang his hat up and go sit on the beach, mate, I think. But these other ones like AR and Sun Vista. Sun Vista, we know we've got a big project coming up probably in the next 2 to 3 months. It's been pushed back. I just spoke to Luke yesterday, which is one of the big guys from there, to try and squeeze a bit more work out of them. And we've got a price, there's about 40 units coming up on the north side at Everton Hills that is pretty much given to us, depending on our price, but I'll price it, but we'll have a good foot in the door on that one.
Okay, so but you're saying they pretty much tell you the price that you're going to work at. So what are their parameters on pricing?
Well, basically, I know all their external stuff. They'll say, listen, we've got X amount of work. Can you come in and do it for this amount of per square metre? I know the last job we did for Sun Vista, I just shook hands on it, basically, just so we can get our foot in the door, because that was the first job I done for him, and that turned out to be a $80-something thousand job. However, moving forward, I think now he's seen what Iconic's all about, we might be able to try and negotiate, I suppose. I'd like to negotiate now we've sort of got our foot in the door and see if we can move that price a little bit north, whether it's whatever we need to be for it to be a little bit more beneficial for us.
Okay. So now we have okay. What's this Iconic Concrete at IC, so cloud.com?
That's just our email.
Okay, so why do you use iCloud.com?
I don't know. I don't have a website set up, and what I would have liked to, we started to build a website for Iconic Concrete, and then it just got, I had an Indian guy that I was dealing with through a friend of mine, and we got a website half built for like $600, and it just got too hard. And I was trying to get an email address put up through there, so I just ended up getting an iCloud free account through Apple that we use. That's basically why I've got that one there.
So that's why it's iCloud.
Yeah.
You don't think it could be Iconic Concrete at Icon Concrete?
It could be, yeah.
Yeah, it's just a matter of setting it up. But again, we got Iconic Concrete. I mean, you present very well.
Yep.
And then we look at it and we see. My question is, if you look back at an invoice,
yep,
how would you know in your own mind? So I can see what we've done here. Concrete driveway. So now we would take the 139.6 square meters, yeah?
Yes.
And we divide that by 5,025.60 to know what it is per square meter.
Correct.
Okay, will that come out in each case?
Yes. Yep.
Kelly, the problem with our invoices is we're doing them all manually at the moment. Like I try to, because they're templates just in Excel. That's why they take a long time. That's why I want to get something in place that can produce them, because at the moment I'm typing all of these out as well. Like we're typing all the detail. then the amounts and making sure that it's correct. And it takes me a long time. And obviously, Gerry and I probably shouldn't be invoicing together so much. But I think we need to come up with a system that works, that can store the information. Because as I said, at the moment, the information is stored in a spreadsheet. We don't have it anywhere else.
Well, when I'm looking at this and I'm saying to myself, okay, I'm trying to build data.
Yeah.
Yep.
That's all I'm looking at doing, is how do I build data here?
Okay.
And when I look at this thing, it's clear to me that I'm going to do a per square meter charge.
Yeah.
And so if I'm going to have another column in here. And if you imagine in your Excel spreadsheet, you have, let me do it. If I'm looking at this, I'm putting something else here,
Mm-hmm.
right? And then I'm going to come across this way. Right? And then my charge out rate's going to be per square meter.
Yep.
And then when I've got 139.62 per square meter, then I'm going to have the per square meter charge. Because don't forget, when you're gathering data, spreadsheets or whatever, you have a column and you have a row.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And what we want to do is we want to sort. If we're going to manage this thing, Gerry, you've got the potential of running a multi-million-dollar business on what you've existingly got.
Yeah.
Right? But the question is, how do you make sure your cash flows? Because the bigger you get, the more you've got to get the money to flow faster and more consistently, and you've got to get your costs right.
Yes.
That's as clear as anything. Your branding is actually very strong. And you can see that a lot of it is to do with the way you're manually thinking about it. And you can see that you've thought very well about it. But what we need to do is we need to say, okay, I'm going to have a price list. And as a price list, if we take this now, have you guys got a calculator?
Oh, yes, go on.
Okay, well, you can do that while I do the other.
Yep.
So now we have a text box here. And we now divide $5,025.60 by 139.62. 139.6 rather square meters. And what do we get?
$36.
So now we're going to go 36, and that's
Per square meter. Yeah.
as QM, yeah?
Yep. SQM. Yep.
And so we look at that and we say, okay, that's what it is.
Yep.
Now, why is that important to us?
Because in a Excel spreadsheet, that'll just automatically calculate that amount for us without manually typing it in.
Yeah, and it'll automate. That's one thing. But now let's just check it out. 2,476.80 divided by 68.8. Let's just see how consistent your argument is. $36. So it's the same again.
Yep.
So we go down. Now what we have to determine is, I want you to write this down. Everything starts at 1 and then divides. So Megan, from our point of view, what we want to know is what's inside the 36.
Mm-hmm.
You understand my point? how many people were on the job,
Yep.
you know, and it's like we start going this way again.
Yep.
You understand what I'm doing, Megan?
Yes.
So the 36 is the total amount per square meter. This is the total amount for the job done. But then we have to calculate where all the costs are,
Yes.
because we really have to determine. The one thing about your business, Gerry, is it can go south very quickly.
Oh yeah.
One contractor could shut your business down.
Yep.
Right. And what we might be saying to someone like your wayward payer, Brick Construction,
Yep.
we might have to say, no, we would like to do this at 36.5 per square meter. Why do I do that?
To allow for us waiting
The
for.
cost of the money, exactly right.
Yeah.
And it's like, it's one thing to say, look, Gerry, can you do it for 36? And then you negotiate and say, sorry, I can't do it for 36. I'm going to have to do it for 36.5.
Yep.
And if he says, why? And just say, well, my costs are, the costs for you are usually quite high.
Yep.
And then he said, well, how can I lower the costs? And you can say, well, we could lower the cost by getting payment. If you can guarantee to pay me at 30 days, I can do it at 36 per square meter. You see, you've got on this payment in full within 7 days. That, you know that's not going to happen. Well, Sunny Vista, you definitely know it's not going to happen.
Yep. Yeah, because they pay every fortnight on time, every time.
Yeah, but what you do is payment in full by agreement.
By agreement. Yeah.
But what is your agreement?
Well, that my terms, which is up there, but that's not.
Well,
correct.
that's not that's but my point to you is like when you send out an invoice, it's a completion of what you're looking at. So you got to be very, very specific. If we're going to, you know, the frightening thing for you is if you take on more liability in terms of funding more jobs, you've got to make sure the money ages better than it ages.
Yeah.
And the thing that's really obvious to me is when you're working with people or small invoices, it's really quite easy to set the rules and then live by the rules. 10% down, 40%. That seems to me to be a very reasonable, because you're covering your expenses,
Yep.
but you're still sharing the risk.
Yeah.
Because by the end of the job, you gotta pay. Now, do you understand what a spread is?
The spread is the amount between two numbers. Is that right?
Okay, but we're now talking, and we're going to talk about a spread of time.
Yep.
Job starts here, completes here.
Yep.
Right? How much time's between the two? See, your job doesn't start when you pour. Your job starts when you get the contract.
Yes.
And now you're starting to spread your money. And so when you look at it, your spread's going to be, and by the sound of what I can hear, your spread can be up to 3 months from this point to this point.
Yes.
Right? And between there, you're spreading not only, you're spreading time, you're spreading money, and you're spreading energy. Right? And so when you think about that, Megan, that's exactly what you and I spoke about earlier when we said, what are you going to do on Monday and Tuesday? And we know when we're going to expect the money to flow, but you've really got to determine where you've got to be and where you put your focus.
Yeah.
So, Gerry, you've got coming into this moment here, you've got getting the contract, but you're actually starting out here.
Yeah.
Because you're canvassing for it. So you really have much longer cycles in your building program than than what you would do than Megan does. Megan doesn't have those long cycles,
Mhm.
right? So she's a short cycle sale. You're a long cycle sale.
Yep.
Does that make sense to both of you guys?
Yeah.
And your spreads are very different. And that's what we've got to watch very carefully, because when we're looking at it, we live in a thing called a flow economy, right? So if you look at it, we're in flow. Everything we do is about flow. So we got time, energy, money. All of those are flow.
Yep.
Right? And we've got to determine it. If we're going to really do it, the truth is, Megan, you can't be doing all of this stuff. It's taking far too much of your time
And energy.
and energy.
Yeah.
But at this moment, we've got to be very careful about how we allocate it in another way.
Yep.
Because otherwise, you end up getting beyond your cash flow, your energy flow, and your time flow.
Yeah.
And so we've got to look at it from that perspective. And so, Gerry, it's pretty clear to me that you've got this thing that starts out here. So it'll start out here to get to this point.
Yep.
The question is, how far that way is it?
Mhm.
You understand my point?
Yes. Yep.
So when you're dealing with builders, builders really will have quite good schedules, right?
Yeah, usually, yes. Yeah.
Well, not usually. That's the whole nature of their business. Their business doesn't start until they sell something.
Yeah.
And once they've sold it, they've got to program it into their cash flow.
True.
And you've got to tap into that thought. You've got to say to them, how do I increase the amount of work that I'm going to get from you? And now you choose. You choose based on what you can see through the numbers that you already have.
Mhm.
Right? And so when we start looking at it, our thoughts have got to go to, and I'm trying not to keep it too complex, but our thoughts have got to go on your spreads of your time, energy, and money. So that's what we're looking at, is the spread. And when we look at the spread, I would say that you're typically a long cycle sale.
Yeah, I'd agree.
Okay. But what's a long cycle that you're talking about? What do you think as an average would be the cycle?
Look, I think it depends on the size of the job that we're doing too. I think it would vary. But yeah, I don't
But
know.
that starts after this red line.
Yep.
There's this thing in the blue line.
Yep.
Which is, it seems to me you're at cause. You're not at converting. You're at the cause of somebody else. You understand what that means?
They're taking advantage of me, basically. Is that what you said?
Well, no, taking advantage is not the words I would use, because I don't think they're taking advantage of you. They're using your service as you project it.
Yeah, okay.
And you project it as saying, well, we'll do this, we'll do this, we'll do this. But it's pretty clear that if somebody uses you again, you're developing a relationship.
Mm-hmm.
But what's the relationship? You see this blue out here. That should be, we should be able to go to these companies. I'm going to have to erase it or it'll come.
Yep.
We'll come back to this in a minute. But if I don't erase it, it'll go onto the screen that we're talking. Okay, so now when we go back to the spreadsheet, right? And if I get rid of that, it should be okay. Now, if we go back to this spreadsheet, Okay. So now we go back here. We can see we're developing relationships.
Yep.
And you've already told me who you want to have the relationships with.
Yeah.
You know, and you're saying brick construction is not doing what we want them to do. But look how many jobs you've done for him.
Yeah, I know. Yeah.
You see, he would be the number one job
He is.
provider.
Yeah, he does a fair bit of work. We actually currently started a big one with him now. last Wednesday.
Was that your poor last Wednesday?
Correct. Yes. Yeah. So I think owes us, I don't know, there's a fair bit he owes us today. So we're going to do some invoicing today. Well, Wednesdays is payday for the boys, and I'd like to make it invoice day as well.
No. We invoice this. You see, we're talking about spreads, Gerry.
Yeah, okay. Yep.
Okay, think about a spread. You know, in legal terms, if you invoice him a week after you've done the job, how's your money aging now?
Yeah.
It's 7 days late.
7 days old, yeah. Yep.
Right? We've got to get it so that you can leave something on the job. That's why we've got to have an automated pricing and automated invoicing, or we've got to get an agreement. I've got a thing called Neuron, which I'm happy to show you. I'm happy to get my son to show you, and it might work for you. We've developed our own ERP, and I'm certainly not wanting to get into that right now. I'm wanting to get into the basic of what you have to do. And in my mind, the first basic things that we have to do is we have to look at how do you create a price list. See, it's very easy for you, Megan. You have a price list. We can work with your price list.
Yep.
Gerry's told what to work to.
Yes.
But all the apples aren't the same apples. There's no way, from what you're telling me, just because brick construction gives you more work, there's no way in the world you can do more work for bridge construction.
Yep.
If it was your only client on this list, you'd be broke.
Yeah. Yeah, I'd agree.
Well, think about it. After a while, you're his bank.
Yeah.
And if he goes down, just think where you go.
Down with him.
Well, I don't think you'll go with him, because you actually have got other things that keep you going. And as we develop your business, we've got to get back to those 1 in 200 clients that you could work with in driveways and other pours, and we can get your cash flows to move.
Yeah.
But that all depends on the energy you have to put in to get to your red point. It's all the work you do on the blue side. Remember what we're saying? It's up to this moment, and then to this moment, and then to this moment.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And there's no doubt that you have a lot more control on a $1,500 to $2,000 driveway than you do on a house pour.
Yeah.
Because on a driveway, they're not likely to go down the tubes and take you with them.
Yeah.
Right? So that's my thing about increasing the volume of money that you might bring into your business. My concern is funding growth is very expensive. Right? And if you grow and you don't manage your money well, you've got to get that you're not aging your money very well. Mm-hmm. Megan, can you explain to me these emails and pay receipts and all the rest? Can you explain what that means in G&H?
So the email is once the invoice has been emailed to the client. The pay reconciliation is once we've received payment, and the date next to that payment is normally the date that they've paid.
So they started the job on the 20th and they paid it on the 31st.
So the invoice, I don't have the start date of the job on this list. The far left column A is the day that I invoice them. So that's the day
Ah.
I physically send the invoice out. And then the pay reconciliation is what the date that the payment hits the bank.
So it's not a true indication of the flow.
No.
You understand what's going on here, Gerry?
Yes. Yep. That's that old money that's sitting there. So just looking at like line 2 in column A, so that's the date we started the job. Is that what you're saying?
No, that's the date.
That's the date it's invoiced.
Be like
Okay.
1 to 2 to 3 weeks later.
Yep. And then if we jump to column I, is that the date they paid? So that's what, 11 days.
Yeah, but based on what you're saying to me, that's pretty good.
Yeah, they don't all pay.
But what that tells us is, guess who becomes a target for a customer?
Yeah.
Yeah.
This is a target. This is why you look at this stuff.
Yep.
And Gerry, I want you to bend over on that windowsill behind you, and we're going to get a broom. You can't be invoicing. You should leave something on the job site signed.
Yep.
Right? Because when you send the invoice later, what if somebody starts questioning you about the invoice?
Yeah.
You see, it's almost like, Megan, I think the fastest thing for us to do is to get an invoice book printed up and force Gerry to get it signed on the site at the end of the pour.
Yeah.
You've got to keep track of it so that's the moment, Megan, that's the moment that the invoice starts. When the accounts department sends the invoice out, that's your email. But it would send it out not on the date that you email, but on the date that you finish the job. Do you understand my point?
Yes. So
what we would do, I think your invoice is quite good. I think that's really quite good the way you've laid it out. Obviously, it can be laid out way better. And if we went into an accounting package, we would lay it out a lot better than this.
Yep.
Right? And then when payment details, iconic, okay. Okay, so this is a payment claim under the buildings. I don't know how that protects you.
Yeah, I don't know. Who told us that? There was an accountant, or no, it was the one of our estimators said under that act, if it's on your invoice, they've got to pay it apparently. So we thought, oh yeah, okay, let's just throw it on there.
Okay, but again, if you're going to put that there, you better get a signature underneath it.
Yeah.
Do you understand my point, Megan?
yes, that they're agreeing to it.
They're agreeing to that you've done this work.
Yes.
Right, and when you do it on the job, the thing that I would do, Megan, is I would get a duplicate. So I would be a carbon book at this stage.
Yep.
And if it works manually, it'll work digitally. Because you've got to get the process right. And in my view, the way you've put, this is a tax invoice, great. So they can use it, and they got the Sunny Vista, they've got all of that. Date, invoice number, great, payment in terms, so they can track it. Now, with your larger customers, you're going to have a supplier number. So do you have a supplier number with these other groups? Does AR development, do you have a supplier number?
Do you mean supplier or purchase order?
No, both. In a PO,
Yeah.
they're going to have a supplier number on the PO.
Okay.
So the thing is, and you must, in their system, if they automate it the way they automate it, you will have a supplier code.
Yep.
And that would be interesting to find out what the supplier code is. Why would you do that, Gerry?
So it's traceable. We know those numbers trace back to whoever that.
Yeah, we want to constantly trace it. Now, when you start to remember what you said earlier, you want to do more work for governments and things like that.
Yep.
Or councils. Well, you got to be able to demonstrate you can manage the paper flow.
Yeah.
And the way that you manage the paper flow. If this were me right now, I'd immediately go out and I would go to Officeworks or something like that, and I would get a book and I would put it in your truck, and I would thrash you severely if you didn't come home after a job with that thing signed.
Yep.
With what was agreed on the job. It takes the pressure off Megan there for the aging of the money.
Yep.
Right? And does that make sense to you, Megan?
Yes.
And you should write any detail on that. We should make sure that the invoices have details. And so now it's actually quite easy to automate your process.
Yep.
Right? So we can follow through with the process. And Gerry, from a pricing point of view, ultimately, we want to know when we're dealing in concrete, the per square meter job, right?
Yes.
Now, what happens when you're hiring out your tools, your equipment?
Yeah, I don't put any cost on that.
Yeah, no, I know you don't. That's part of your per square meter cost.
Yeah, so maybe I can build it into the square meter cost.
Well, but you do. But what if you're doing jobs where you only use that? Where you just set up the formwork, or you do the digging, or you do whatever you do there. What if you're only doing that?
I don't understand what you're getting at, Kelly. Sorry.
Well, what happens if you're contracting out your cutting when you're just doing that? What's your per hour charge on that?
Yeah, I don't have a set pricing structure yet.
But how do we go out to the market and sell those services to the market if we don't know what we're going to sell them for?
Yeah, I can get that information because the guy that I was using prior to me getting my own saw, pretty close with him. So I ring him for advice and see what he charges, and then I try and charge the same, if not a little bit less, so we can pick up the concrete and the concrete cutting.
Okay, now are these have got diamond blades, right?
Correct.
Okay, now when you have to replace a diamond blade, how much do you charge for that? Because they're not cheap, are they?
No, some of these blades are up to, I think the last blade cost me $320 or $330.
And how many cuts will a blade do?
Look, on average, it might last. If we're using it every day, it could last probably 2 months. You know, if we use it every day, but we don't.
Is this a traveling saw where it travels across the floor?
No, this is just a little handheld,
Okay.
like a chainsaw type size motor with a big blade on it.
And so, and when you cut, do you move along it, or do you cut stationary?
Yeah, you sort of walk with it. Yeah. So if you're cutting a curb out or cutting a section of path out, it sort of sits in like a cradle, and you can walk with it, and it'll just cut through for you.
Okay, and can you warp the blade?
Could you warp the blade?
Yeah, by heating up.
Yeah, I don't know. You'll
If
probably.
you don't have a good operator, can he screw your blade up in a few cuts?
Yes, yeah.
Yes.
There's not enough water running through the blade to keep it cool. Correct. Yep.
See, I know an awful lot about it, don't I, Megan? You know how I know? I've actually done it,
Okay.
and I actually screwed a blade up in a half an hour, and the guy he nearly put me off site.
Yeah, and it depends what you're cutting to. Like if you cut asphalt with a diamond blade, it'll just blunt it straight away. So there's different types of blades for different applications.
Okay, so do you think you should have a blade replacement cost? You see,
Right.
you've got all your equipment, and you've got to calculate, like, all the equipment that you got costs you so much money,
Yes.
but you've got to replace it. It's not, you've got to always have the money to be able to replace it. So it's great to get it in the beginning because it can be financed or whatever else.
Yeah.
But then what happens when it has to be replaced? You got to pay for it somehow.
Yeah, for sure. Yep.
And so you've got to start looking at the replaceability of the equipment that you have. If you're going to grow something quite large, and if you're going to grow it and make it so that it's a business that somebody else will buy, you have to answer these questions.
Yeah.
Iconic is a brand that could be sold. You understand my point? And you're at the right time to consider all the things you put into it and how you calculate what you do it, because that's what someone's going to buy. You want to create something that's a great asset, then you've got to start answering the questions that I'm talking to you about now.
Yeah, sure.
What's the replacement cost of the equipment? What's the replacement of a diamond blade? What's the replacement, and how many of these can I have? All the rest of it. And as you start to get into more and more work where you're doing home stuff and that, you'll probably need more tools and more equipment to make it efficient.
Yeah.
The ones where you do with the builders is, in your terms, is really quite straightforward, right?
Yeah, very straightforward, because it's labour only, basically, apart from a few things that we could pick up. Like sometimes I pick up a little bit of excavation work because I've got my own excavator. We pick up a little bit of saw cutting work, but most of it is labour only. So, yeah.
Yeah, and so when you're looking at this now, you've got an awful lot of equipment to be labor only.
Yeah.
Right. So we've got to consider that when we're considering all of our cash flows and our time flows and our money flows.
Yep.
And so the thing that stands out to me on this right now is, you're doing, Megan, you're doing a good job, but I think you're doing a good job with large volumes of money, and it's half-baked. I don't know any other way. I was going to use some other language, but I think half-baked is, we've got to get it so it's more current.
Yeah, definitely.
And we got to get it like understanding your email, your pay received. And when you start to look at this, you can see, personally, if it were me, I'd have a limit on how much work I would do for brick construction before I wouldn't do work until I was paid. Because you're far too vulnerable. And you can see by the number of jobs that he's done, I mean, it looks like he's probably got cash flow and you're the banker.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Yeah, well, it doesn't have to be a rude talk. It just has to be a talk where you say, look, I'm actually losing money on this. We're going to have to increase it by a few percent.
Yeah.
Right? And it's like, you're his banker, mate.
Yeah.
And some moment he'll look at that, and you're saying this, George Copland. You know what I'd be saying to him from what you've told me?
No,
well, he's ready to retire, right?
Yeah, I think he might have one job left in him, but yeah, he's ready to retire, I think.
I'd sidle right up to that guy and say, look, I'm just starting. What would you do?
Yeah. Yeah, he's a good old guy too.
Yeah, well, he's a good old guy that I would talk to and say, look, we're wanting to do this. What do you think? Mm-hmm. Has he been successful?
Yes, he has. He's got a bit of money. Yeah.
Who better to take advice from somebody that's got a bit of money and is retiring?
Yeah.
See, and then I'd start asking him around pricing. How do you guys price? How do you work out the pricing? Because it's clear you have a naivety around pricing.
Yeah.
And I'd like to do a lot more with you on pricing, but I just don't have the level of experience. Once I know what needs to be looked at, I can really support you on how to create formulas and everything else. But we need to be market smart too.
Yeah.
Indigo and construction, what's that about?
We're not doing any more work for him. We put one invoice in and then he jumped up and down about it. So I'm not doing any more work for that guy. Tried to screw us down even more on price. So we don't do any work for him anymore. Yeah.
So you learned pretty quickly. And what about Jacob Concrete and Construction?
Yeah, he's why are they in yellow? He's pretty bad too. We're chasing money off him. I think he owes us at the moment $1,200 or something. A few days from Christmas, and yeah, he's terrible. He's actually going to shut up shop, I've been told. So, but yeah, I want to get my money out of him before he closes down.
Well, I would say you've got mine in Buckley's.
Yeah. Oh.
Okay, so what's this telling you, Megan, when we just talked through this? I mean, have you guys ever sat down and talked through it?
No, because maybe a little bit, but I think because I'm a bit more brutal, like I'll just ring up and ask, like, and follow up the invoices and things like that. But I think Gerry has a relationship with some of these people like Brick, and he's kind of agreed sometimes for the payments to be late. I think that's kind of played into it a little bit. But I think we don't have the system where it all runs smoothly. But I think from what you've done now, I can see definitely like where we should be investing our time and who it should be invested in.
Well, and to me, I wouldn't be getting rid of Brick Construction, but I'd be very careful. I'd have them on a limit.
Yeah.
Right. And I'd know how much I would be willing to carry. Right. And you have to say, before I start this job, I mean, do they owe you money from other jobs before you started your pour on Wednesday?
No, not Brick.
Not
no,
this. Not
no,
this
they
time,
were all paid up.
but they have in the past.
Yeah, no, but they didn't owe us money. But they were all up to date, and then we started a new project from only a week and a half ago. Yeah, 2 weeks.
Okay, so you understand the point I'm making.
Yes. Yep.
It's like there's always going to be customers like Brick. You don't get rid of them. You just manage them.
Yeah.
And so you better work out what your tolerance is. Like you got a $27,000 invoice on one. What's your Wednesday pour going to be worth, Gerry?
Yeah, we done last Wednesday and Friday, and I think they owe us $29,000 they owe us.
Yeah. Well, that'd be as far as I'd go.
Yeah. So we in fact, he actually asked for an invoice yesterday because he rang yesterday, and I said, "Yeah, look."
He had to ask you for an invoice?
Yeah, because we've had this discussion. I'll run you through what actually Brick Construction is. He's a builder, but they're not his jobs. He builds for clients. And I know that last one that we done at LeGrand Street, McGregor, it was for some Lebanese people down in Sydney. So although we done the work, he was waiting to get paid from these Lebanese guys. And I said to him, I said, look, I couldn't give two shits who they are. You owe us, you're behind. And he goes, mate, I need to get paid from these guys to pay you. Now, the job that we're doing now at Jones Road, Carina, is the same owner of Wattle Ave. And he's an old guy. He's about, it'd be in his late 70s, I'd say, be around 70. And he's got money, this old guy. So when we're on Wattle Ave job, I got paid on time. Not too bad, eh? We weren't too bad there at Wattle Ave. I still had to squeeze him for money, but not as bad as these other guys. So Brick Construction don't really build his own jobs. He builds for other clients.
Yeah,
However, there's two.
it's all nice stories,
Yeah,
but really, I'm like Megan in this matter. It's a nice story,
yeah,
and we have to manage it. We have to manage it and say, you knowing that, you've got to actually increase the per square meter charge.
yep,
And you've got to be brutal about it. You've got to say, well, if I charge AR Developments, if I'm charging them $36 or SunVista $36 a square meter, you got to charge this brick construction guy 37 or 36.50. It's got to be higher.
yep,
Right? And he's bidding it out to somebody else, right?
yeah,
Which means he's putting something on it too.
correct. Yeah,
Right? Well, he can take a hit.
yeah,
Right? You just got to understand, all we want to do is manage it.
yes,
And you know, again, I cannot emphasize enough that today your task is to go down to Office Works and create a carbon copy invoice book, right? And that's what Megan should be working from. She should only have to look at that, and even if she said, okay, on this day of the week, we're going to send out all our email invoices, our email statements, whatever you want to call it.
yep,
Megan, you know, it's actually a statement of money's owed. The invoice has already been issued and signed, and then you can say, here's our invoice. Boom. Here's a PDF of our invoice. This is the date it was done. This is when it should be paid, and now you've increased the speed of your money aging.
Mm-hmm.
Your money should be aging at the end of the job.
Yep.
Right? And Gerry, that's going to be your responsibility when at the end of the job is to get somebody to sign off the job. That construction clause that you have,
yes,
that you should have the signature just below that.
okay,
Does that make sense, Megan?
Yes.
So if you're looking at that, and then we'll reshape this invoice as we start to get it, as we get the invoice book. Gerry, I would get an invoice book with maybe 25 pages,
yeah,
25 numbers on it, so that we've got consistent through what we're doing. And then we can automate it. Take your call, Gerry.
no, it's all right. It's all right. It's not.
We've only got a little bit to go anyway, but and I really want to get very clear about this, like the details that are on the job. We can do that, and a package. Like, do you have this automated in your Excel on your spreadsheet, or is it you have to type it in every time?
Pretty much type in every time. Some
Okay.
little fields come up just from memory, but yeah, nothing's automated besides, yeah, no, nothing's automated.
Yeah, you're working too hard.
I know.
Okay, so we do that. I think the only thing that I would change on this page now is I would actually put in another column.
Yep.
So you can, if you needed to, you could break it down. You understand what I'm saying, Gerry? So we're going to get you to start looking at per square meter, and this is how you derive that price.
Yep.
You
Should
know,
I on the invoice or in an Excel sheet, and then we convert it over to.
no. When you get your invoice made up, you should have that. You may not show that to them, but Megan should know. We should know.
Yeah. Cool. Yeah, because I didn't want to show these guys too much. Like in the tax invoice, I didn't know how in depth to go. So even on that first description, we've just said cover creek and seal areas, townhouses number 1 to 4, and the amount of squares. And then I just said the total, because I said to Megan, I don't want to give them too much information. I don't know if that's, is that bad?
No, but sooner or later, you're going to feel comfortable with that. You need to have another column in here. You can have your total, because these are agreed prices.
Correct.
On the PO, right?
Yes, that's right.
So do they give you a purchase order?
Yes. Yeah. Sun Vista do. Yeah.
Okay, this is their purchase order here.
Correct. Yep.
Okay, so now these prices here are related to this here.
That's right. Yes.
And so they're agreed prices.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay, and then all of that's agreed, so that's fine.
Yeah.
So at this moment, you don't necessarily, I would still have that column in there.
Yeah.
So that we can track it, so we can make sure your costs are covered, so we know whether you're making money or not.
Okay. Yep.
Does that make sense?
Yep. Absolutely.
And so if I were doing it, Megan, I might have another 2 columns in there. Don't put titles on the columns right now, but let's get Gerry on his duplicate. Like, he gives the main copy. He gives the main copy to them signed off with the signature here. And then in the other columns, he can write per square meters, and then there could be another one where you want more details so that we can work out exactly what needs to go on. Does that make sense to you, Gerry?
Yep.
What about you, Megan?
Yes.
I think that will allow us to really start working out what sort of package you want. Yep. And just how much we're going to do in the rest. So we clean that up a bit. Now, in terms of the business itself, we've got to get to moments like these targets that we've set for Megan. And what I think we should be looking at doing over the next 6 months, or more precisely, I like to work in 90-day increments. And in the next 90-day increments, I think we've got to determine the relationships you want with the large builders. Yep. The large builders are actually your stock and trade.
Yep.
But your actual cream has got to be developing iconic concrete for driveways and stuff around individual houses or individual businesses.
Yep.
And we would then look at different, and then we have to get collateral marketing and branding for that. The ARs, the brick concretes, the Leaps and the Sunny Vistas, those are all relational.
Yeah.
You don't need to advertise or market to them. They're going to happen by relationship.
Yep. Right.
Yep.
So you got to develop your relationship. Do you know who all the key players are and all the rest of it? You've got to understand that.
Yeah.
AR developments, and you can forward plan, because remember, in our workflow spread, we're saying there's a lead up time. If we can reduce the lead up time to the start time, we've actually improved your business. And then what we're looking at is from that startup time to the completion of the job, we look at that and we look at what happens there. Then we have to start looking at the money flow and the way that we get the timing on the money flow.
Yep.
Really what you're looking at is time, timing, sequence, and lag.
Yep.
All right, now I know that we're running very close. I want to get this across to you. This is in the field of education, and really in business today, it's about educating your customers as to why they would use you. I'm not going to ask if you guys want to succeed, because really that's implicit. Both of you guys have proved that you want to do better. Okay, in the field of education, you have to realize that we're all students and we're all teachers. But if you take it to a basic science, we're all looking at signals, communication signals. So as a student, you're receiving. It's coming into you. As a teacher, it's transmitting away from you. And what that really means is you're transceiving. Do you know what transceiving means?
We're receiving what you're transmitting. No.
Now you're receiving and transmitting at the same time.
Oh, okay. At the same time.
Each one of us, that's what we do. We transmit information, we receive information at exactly the same time. It's called transceiving.
Yep.
So whenever you're looking at information, all information is a signal. right? And so we're looking at all the signals and we're trying to manage the signals. Like if we look at it, we're talking about Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. What signals are we getting? Well, we know very clearly that we're more likely to do work on, you're probably more likely to do work on Sunday than Monday. And so your close day should be Monday, not Sunday. But those are further down the track. We don't know that yet. But that something's being transmitted, something's being received, and that's just a signal. That's an information signal. So Gerry, when you look at what you're signaling out, you know what you're signaling out to the larger companies by the way you transact.
No, not really.
You're a small player.
Yeah.
Your brand says you're a big player because it's really, really well done.
Yeah.
But your paperwork says you're a small player.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree there.
Okay, you understand what I'm saying, Megan?
Yes.
You've got to realize that there's a signal being sent. Now you want to increase the amount of work you're doing with those larger customers. It's good that you got a few of them.
Yep.
And it's good that you know how their payment schedule goes. And
Yep.
twice a month payment actually sets you really well because you know your risk in time is 2 weeks.
Yeah.
And if you don't get your money in 2 weeks, then you know you need to do something and find out what's going on. But with your brick construction, when you get the information doesn't come the way you want the information to come. It comes, oh, he wants to tell you about his Lebanese guy.
Yeah.
What
that
is
was
that?
just trying to ring me, Cal, so that's why I said that you can wait.
Yeah, but what does it matter?
Yeah.
So what I want you to understand in a business culture, business culture always reflects the character of the leaders and the managers. So Megan said it pretty clearly. As a manager, she just wants her money. As a leader, you say to her, no, hang on, we'll do this. So she follows you. You understand my point?
Yep.
Got to come together on that. And what comes to it is the character of the business is in direct relationship to the leaders and the managers. Yep. And what you guys have got to come together and you've got to start saying, we're going to manage this. Now, business has a fourfolding thought. First of all, there's the knowledge. Did you gain more knowledge about the way you deal with customers this morning? Gerry.
Did I? Yeah. Well, actually, I started a new job today for a new client. So, and yes, I found out he was a nice guy. So, yeah, I found out.
No, that's not what I'm asking you. On our call directly, did you get some knowledge about what you're doing?
Yes.
Yes.
Yep.
I know you're a good, affable guy. That's not in question. We all know that. The question is, did you work out, like just the thing about invoicing 7 days after you complete a job on the aging? That's knowledge.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. Now, when you have that knowledge, do you become accountable?
Yes.
All right. That means you're going to have invoice books ready to rock and roll in the next couple days.
Yes.
That's a priority. For us to be able to manage your business better, we've got to be able to see the signals that are coming into the business. That's the point. Now you have to be responsible, right? You have to be responsible, and you've got to say responsibly. If you had a choice between doing a job with brick construction, you had to choose, or Sunny Vista, who would you choose?
Yeah, Sun Vista all day.
That's responsible.
Yeah.
Now, cognitive control is what we're doing right now.
Yeah.
Right? We're now bringing this into our awareness, which means it's cognitive. It's there. We're knowing how to deal with it. Now we have cognitive control. And so the things that you must know is know why, know how, know when, know where, know who.
Yeah.
Those are all cognitive controls. Know your marketplace. And I think we have to define your marketplace. Megan's already defined her marketplace. We've got to define your marketplace, Gerry.
Yep. And
I think from today's conversation, the way we look at it is we say, We've got the customers that will give us the money for us to do something else. So we've got stability there. But our real cream and our real profit is going to come from the more jobs we can do at 10% down, 40% before we start, and 50% at the completion of the job. The more of that you do, the safer you are.
Yep.
Right? And now we've got to know how to get into that marketplace. We've got to know who the customer is. We got to know the products, the margins, the values, the profits, and the repeating business. Does that make sense?
Yep.
Most of all, Gerry, you got to know yourself.
Yeah.
Know what worked and know what didn't work. And I can hear that you have a pretty good sense and a pretty good feel of that. Right?
Yeah.
And so I'll go through a lot of this other stuff, but I'm going to go to the bottom. Is you're always feeding forward and getting stuff coming back. Whether you like it or not, it comes back. But you choose what you feed forward.
Yep.
Okay. Selling is a macro process, which means it's big. Right? Sales transactions are small and specific. And so what you guys have learned today is the aging. You cannot leave a job, and you can have that thing at the bottom of your page all you want. You put it there for your own convenience. You put it there and get somebody to sign on it. Now you've got it completed and an agreement. Before that, they could all bitch and carry on, oh, well, you didn't do this, you didn't do that. And we said, no, hang on a second. I went over that, and as part of your invoice, we'll soon start to put on, were you satisfied with the work? Did this happen? Did this happen? Tick, tick, tick. And then you put that thing at the bottom, and then the person signs. Now it's a legal document, and they pay.
Yeah.
You understand my point? Yeah. Those are other things that we'll put on your document and that you will check. And sooner or later, we'll get you the great document that we can then digitize. Does that make sense to you, Megan?
Yes.
Okay. So I'm going to stop sharing. I won't go into any more of this, and say, because we're very close to time. Not that I'm really wanting to watch time, but Gerry, do you understand what we're doing right now?
Yes, I do.
What are we doing?
Pulling apart. Well, what we just spoke about now, the whole session.
Yeah, the whole session.
Just giving some constructive feedback on how Iconic's been going, I suppose. We're pulling the business apart and seeing where we're going wrong and what we're doing right. And
I'd say you're doing more things. I'd say you're doing way more things correct than you're doing wrong.
Yep.
But we're talking about managing your brand.
Yep.
You don't manage your brand. You created a brand that you don't manage.
Yeah.
That's pretty obvious of what's going on.
Yeah.
Right. And what I want you to do is manage your brand.
Yeah.
Right. And you can see, I mean, anybody that sees your vehicles and sees your paperwork would think, gee, this guy is quite big. But what gives you away is when you go into the detail of it. Your macro looks good, your micro doesn't, it looks terrible.
Yeah.
Right? And terrible to words that are worse than terrible. And that's really to do with your administration.
Yeah, oh, for sure. We knew that was in.
Don't look at Megan. It's not her fault. Megan, did you see him look at you straight away?
But like I said to Megan, I'm a tradesman. I don't know admin. You get me out in the paddock, that's what I do in the field. I can run a job, no dramas. When I get in the office and I don't know how to do invoicing, I don't know how to do any paperwork. I don't even know how to use Excel sheets. I'm hopeless at Word documents.
You know what, Gerry? We can sort all of that out very quickly.
Yeah.
The first thing we have to do is recognize what to sort out.
Yeah.
First thing is behavior.
Yeah, for sure.
And you can tell me that you like working in the paddock, you can do a job, but you're a business owner too.
Yeah.
So you not only have to know the trade, you have to know the business.
Correct. Yeah.
Right. And if you're gonna grow and oversee and manage, The great thing about you is workers on the job can't bullshit you.
Yeah.
You know what's what.
Oh yeah.
But from the other side of it, though, you're being raped and pillaged on the management. That's clear.
Yeah.
Right. And our job is to make sure you understand that.
Yeah. No.
Right. And it's not, they're observations. I want both of you guys to know that you've done what most people can't do. Right. And so let's not worry too much about it. They're observations that can be managed and controlled.
Yep.
So Gerry, how do you feel and what do you take away from today?
I feel a little relieved. Oh, not relieved, but I'm glad we're sort of starting on having a look at a few admin things. I knew my admin is shocking. I've always been hopeless with paperwork, and I'm glad we're trying to move forward and do something about it. That's what I'm excited about. What I took away from today is about the flow on time and energy and money, and just jumping on that moving forward. That's a big thing that I've got to jump on. Yeah, and that's me. How do you feel, and what did you take away?
I feel relieved from today. I think more so from the iconic concrete side of things. I think because it's been hard to do admin when I don't understand, and I think when there's no set structure or pricing. So I'm happy that we've discussed moving forward, and Gerry has an idea of what we need to do, like with the pricing structure moving forward, because I think that's been a big issue. So I feel very relieved and confident that we're going to be able to get processes in place to make everything easier.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
So Kelly, how do you feel about today, and what do you take from today?
Well, I feel relieved that we finally got into iconic as well, because the truth is it looks a great business.
Yeah.
And it could be a great business. But what we need to do is absolutely, this is where a lot of tradespeople fall down, Gerry, and they end up losing all their money. It's because they don't manage it.
Yeah.
And at least you're aware enough. You're aware that you don't know. Most people don't even know that.
Yeah.
So you're building a good brand. Now we need to manage that.
Yep.
And it'll be saleable. I'll tell you, it'll do better than your Bitcoins for sure.
Yeah.
Okay. That's how I feel. That's what I take.